had the opportunity to discuss with Mrs. Meilleur earlier today, and she informed me that she was withdrawing her candidacy to be the official languages commissioner. And quite frankly, I think this is a very sad story, but ultimately she has taken her decision.
Madeleine Meilleur withdrew herself from the Official Languages Commissioner nomination. Welcome back to PNP and the Power Panel, Yolande, Tim, Althea, and Robin. This is a weird story because it was very, it was a little bit in the Ottawa bubble, but the people that cared a lot. Yeah. Acadians, Francophones outside of Quebec, people inside Quebec.
Anglophones in Quebec.
Anglophones in Quebec. Yeah, exactly. And I don't, I'm not sure the minister's right when she qualifies it as a sad story.
Well, maybe it's sad for her.
Maybe
she was defending.
Now she's got to find somebody
else. In the
else.
House of Commons for the past 2 weeks.
Okay,
so.
let's start with Yolande. What do you make of the way this story has? I guess it's ended now. Go ahead.
I think I'd have to say that it starts by kind of, I think, a misdiagnosis from the beginning.
Okay.
In that maybe the focus was on Madeleine Meilleur's credentials, given that what she had done, not just as a minister, but defending minority Francophone communities, and the government did not assess correctly the fact that when you carry a partisan, a background, that is, in this case, a burden. So if you're going to try to make that appointment, you can't evaluate it as the same way as you would someone else. You have to be even doubly backed. So if they were going to make this appointment a success, all the stakeholders, the opposition had to practically be asking or begging for her candidacy for it to work. I'm not saying that that's what's fair, but that's what it is, and that's part of the price that you pay when you have been active in politics with the party that's in power. So I think that was underestimated from the beginning, and the story just kept growing and growing and growing. I mean, for me, as when I saw it was 80% of the question period, and then the articles. This was sadly, in the sense that, I mean, I don't think this is something that Madeleine Meilleur would have wanted to go through. That it ended in this way. It was pretty clear that.
Although she damned herself a couple of times by admitting that she had met with the chief of staff and
well, should we be saying that? We should be congratulating her for being truthful.
Yes, but fine, fair, but she must have known that would cause some problems.
But there's another problem with that, too, and Yolande will know this, having been a minister, and those who've been in politics know this. You never should appoint the people who are always looking for appointments. There's an old sort of rule that if you're going to appoint somebody, don't appoint the person who's putting their hand up, because when somebody's soliciting, chances are they've solicited at a lot of different places. They've done it in a clumsy manner.
Are you talking about
Senator
one
Duffy
particular?
I know. I was going to say. I can think of a guy that did that.
Well, I know about 5 people who've tried to become senators and put their hands up to do it, and they know to have a chance of becoming a senator. So that's lesson 1 for Madeleine Meilleur. I'm surprised
good life lesson, really.
I'm surprised she didn't know better, because she was a minister of the Crown in Ontario. Point 2, building off Yolande, I think this partisan issue, yes, it has more of a bearing here because the role is unique. Though Madeleine Meilleur, to her credit, because I know my sister has had a lot to do with the French hospital here in Ottawa, Le Montfort, did some very good work there. But and I don't think partisans should be disqualified for appointments simply because they've been partisans. But I think this was a different sort of position where there is a purity required. But the opposition also have to be a little bit careful what they wish for, going too hard and saying, well, you're putting a partisan in this role. Every government puts partisans in different roles. That's part and parcel of it. So it's a bit of a faux
Except this government made a big deal about it.
Yeah, they made a big deal. I know. Yeah. I'm giving them a little bit of help.
I can't believe you're letting them off.
Well, I said she shouldn't have looked for the job, and they should have been wiser.
Okay, Robin.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tim's right. An independent officer of Parliament, such as the Ethics Commissioner or the Official Languages Commissioner, is a bit of a different role than, say, the Senate. Senate, which apparently she was too partisan for, which I find interesting, because if she was too partisan for the Senate, then she's probably too partisan to be someone that's going to judge whether the government's abiding by the laws that it should be when it pertains to official languages. This is a very interesting development, and the timing of it is also very interesting. What happened right afterwards and what happened right before, I think, matter. You had caucus meetings, and I wonder if there were any Liberal MPs who said, you know what, guys, you tried to get this done and you failed. Please stop, because it's hurting us.
Possibly.
You also had question period right after, but so it's hard to kind of fathom, and I don't know anything to this effect, but that she just recused herself from this because while she attested that she had meetings with senior advisors to the Prime Minister, and that she never talked about this position to them, have any of them talked to her since this became a problem issue?
Yeah.
She never was a good candidate for this, and as Tim says, if someone is really trying to get a job, almost any job, then that's maybe not the best person to put in a very important job. It's also relevant that the Prime Minister has had problems with Official Languages Act in the fact when he was in Quebec and he refused to answer a question in English to an Anglophone Quebecer.
That's true.
So perhaps if she was having to investigate the Prime Minister again, she would have to recuse herself, and because she donated to his leadership campaign.
Yes, yeah,
how can you have someone who donated to his leadership campaign investigating whether or not he's violated the Official Languages Act?
Or in the whole government, frankly. Yeah.
So I don't think this really hurts the government's mantle when it goes to having a non-partisan, merit-based appointment process. It's not the only example, of course, but it's a bad one.
I have several things I'd like to say.
Yes, I have a thing I'd like to say too, but you go first, because you're the guest.
Okay, so first of all, I think the government really wanted to make the case that she was qualified for the position. And in fact, I was surprised that the opposition did not challenge her on those competencies. But they didn't take the consultation process that they were legally obliged under the Act seriously. Writing a letter 2 days before you would nominate someone publicly and you don't call them or seek to have their input, I think if they had pressed more, they might have gotten a sense that the opposition wasn't going to give them an easy ride with this and dished this really earlier on and saved everybody a whole bunch of embarrassment. Second, I really think it has more to do with the Senate. I've spoken to a lot of senators, and there was a very real sense
I saw you tweet that today.
that she was not going to be approved by the Senate. They didn't seem very impressed with her appearance at committee, and the Tories were definitely not supportive, a number of Liberals and Independents as well. So I think that has more to do with it. Her resignation letter is dated yesterday, so I don't think anything that happened today has anything to do with it. And the second thing,
I think that's like the fifth thing, but keep going.
Okay, sorry.
You're all good.
The last thing I want to say is that this, again, proves the fact that if the opposition really cares about something and they keep hammering, the Liberals will cave. This is the third time now. We had motion 6, we had the procedure stuff, and we had Madeleine Meilleur. And when it speaks to sort of the Liberal brand that they're not living up to, I think, somehow it takes, I think, the government longer than you would expect for them to decide to change course. But in the end, they change course. Right. So if I was sitting on the opposition benches, I would just feel emboldened. Like, bring it on. What else?
You can have the last word. I'm going to say one thing, but it's sort of what Althea said there. What surprised me about this story was that they dug their heels in for so long for something that wasn't really worth it.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't understand why they kept at it, kept trying and trying and trying when really this should have been an easy score, like an easy goal, and it wasn't. And then they stuck with it a little longer, and it just didn't make any sense to me.
They always seem to stick with things a little bit longer.
I know, but that's my thing. That happens a lot.
But perhaps it was out of loyalty. There's relationships that go back there in Ontario. But Althea's bang on.
All the more reason why she shouldn't have been appointed.
Tim, and then Yolande's actually going to have the last word.
Althea's bang on the Senate. I ran into somebody who once had this job in Montreal last week.
Right.
And
just like recently?
Yes.
Oh, right.
and that person made the very point that Madeleine Meilleur was going to have a hard time with the Senate, and did she have any allies in the Senate? Because if she didn't, she wasn't going to get through.
Okay, last word to Yolande.
But I just think it comes down to really underestimating what was ahead. And we'll see how they'll adjust from it. And the fact that they had, and I will agree with Althea on the fact, or I think it was you, Rosie, that the fact that they've put in this whole process of being a new way of doing things, it makes the burden, or it makes the standard even that much higher. So anytime there's any weakness, they have to go back to it because that's the standard that they set for themselves. So it'll be interesting to see what they do next, but it is like I say like a tash, a mark.
Yeah.
So the next ones need to be on point. So I'd be good for former conservatives, I guess. I
Yeah,
don't
the
know.
standards don't seem unattainable, though. That's the thing. It just seems to be
There are a
a
lot of
sort
good
of like
candidates.
blind.
A lot of
There's
people
a
who
shortlist for this.
publicly,
And there's a lot of
rare, came out and
people-
said, I applied for this job.
Yeah.
U of M.
Seemed
Yeah,
like
There are a
they
lot
were
of
pretty-
people that wanted that job. A lot of people. I've heard a lot of people in Quebec wanted that job. A lot of people wanted it.
It's good money too. It's a long appointment. It's good money. Yeah, I've seen the.
308, isn't it?
I think it's something like that.
308,
308. Like that's okay.
For 7 years.
For 7 years.
At least.
You're doing okay. All right. Think about it, Yolande. Maybe next time. Okay.
Don't campaign for it, Thurland. Don't campaign
Don't
for
put
it.
your head up. One more round of power panel after this.